we can talk about boundaries in many different ways. I think thinking about them in a way not directly related to ourselves at first can help us understand its frame. So when we think about borders even, or boundaries of countries, we have boundaries to regulate what comes in and out, to protect what's inside, right? So countries have borders and boundaries because they're trying to protect their citizens. Because the reality of the dunya is that you don't know what's out there. And there is harshness in this dunya. Not everyone and everything is good or has our best interest in mind. There is evil, there is danger, there is negativity. So if we act as if that isn't the case, then we're naive. And we can open ourselves up to serious harm, right? If we just say, hey, it's all love, it's all good, that's actually not necessarily true in the sense of the reality in the dunya. So if we just walk into every situation with no boundary and an open heart, right? So when we even just did that exercise, we're talking about trying to open to your heart. It's really sensitive, vulnerable place, really spiritually and emotionally vulnerable. Imagine walking around with this heart open into the world. You could really, damn, and I'm sure we all have experiences of that, of doing that and being hurt. But so on the other hand, we can't also, the opposite, we can't act as if everyone is out to get us. And then do the opposite, where we're completely armored up, as Micah says a lot. And so what we do is if we were to go like this, because of the harshness in the world, then we would limit ourselves to incredible possibilities for exchanging with what else is outside, right? There are beautiful people, there are experiences, there are possibilities, and there are things that we can receive. The beautiful things that we can receive are sometimes really difficult experiences or difficult people. So we can't just choose to only engage with goodness, right? Because then we miss out on growth. But what we can do is find a way to balance so that we can engage with the difficulty and the harshness of the world, benefit from it, grow from it, but not be completely debilitated from these harsh or negative experiences that we absorb. And so this is where we have to have some sort of semi-permeable membrane where we can understand what can come in and what can come out. And so setting boundaries really is an art. It's about finding a balance, because you have to let some things in and you have to keep some things out. But how do you know which is which, right? How do you know, how can we decipher what comes in and what comes out? That's the same thing that border control has an issue with. People can come to the border and try to get in and they can look really safe. And then there's like a Trojan horse, it's like they bring in something that, ooh, we weren't ready for that. We didn't know that. And so some of this is a learning process. It's unfortunately, you have to go through trial and error. You have to find out where you need to put boundaries in your life. And some of that's gonna be really different for different people. I may be really more sensitive in one area where I need to be really clear about my boundaries in this scenario, where somebody else might not need to be. And so you kind of have to understand for your own personal needs for boundaries. But then there are many universal things that we can understand how to set boundaries based on our humanity and based on how this world works and the spiritual reality of our hearts and our souls and how they can interact with the world, benefit from it, but not be deluded by it and carried away in the evil of the world, in many different ways of the definition of what that means of evil. And so Sharia is that universal set of boundaries that as human beings, Islam, Allah has given us this set of boundaries that we can abide by to protect our souls. Because we're here as souls, we're here to uplift and develop in our spiritual reality. And in order to do that and survive in a way that keeps us in balance and healthy, if we follow these boundaries that are set out for us, then we can mostly be protected from the dangers of the world, spiritually, physically, and socially. But sometimes we don't really understand Sharia in this way. And it can sometimes seem like limited and restricting rules that are about duty. Like, well, I have to do this, or I'm supposed to do this, or Allah wants me to do this. And it's about, well, if I, this whole idea of deen, of like debt, like, well, I have to do this to pay my debt. But it's like this detached thing, as if we're doing it for Allah because Allah wants him to pay us to pay him something. But really, it's Allah giving us this cheat sheet of how we can create this container so that our souls can flourish. And our souls, we have this fitrah of our souls that is not, we're not native to this world of dunya. Right? We came from somewhere else when we're going to somewhere else. This is a temporary place. So while we're here, that native aspect of our souls that is really about light, it is this beings of light. We are beings of light, but when we're in this dunya, we have these dense bodies. Right? And so our bodies and that denseness, the density is really necessary to contain this light in the harsh world. We need the density of the body to carry our beautiful jewel of this light shining soul in this harsh world. And so just like our physical skin is tough and regenerative, right? You can do a lot to our bodies and our skin, then it comes back. You can cut something and it will heal in a matter of days, sometimes in weeks. It's tough. We have this boundary around our soft innards, right? Physically, we have, or our organs and our insides are really soft and vulnerable. If we were walking around with just, tissue and organs, and it would be really tough to get through this life, even just bumping into things and we'd have our organs spilling out everywhere. That's kind of how our souls are. They're really vulnerable. And so we need something to contain it and protect it in this world of harshness and density. And so our bodies become this vessel for our souls. And when we can orient ourselves to boundaries as a way of aligning ourselves spiritually with being able to make it so that our souls benefit the most, right? So that everything is aligned with, well, what's going to allow my soul, the real me, to develop and grow in its best way, rather than how we're often oriented is, how can I get through life so that I'm more comfortable, or so that I can get where I want to go, or so that I'm not hurt. And so we do the boundaries to protect ourselves from slipping up, to protect ourselves from getting hurt, to protect ourselves from negativity. And so it becomes like this. And what we do is we wind up blocking out the experiences that allow us to develop and grow and to find deeper connection with Allah. And so then we just isolate ourselves. And so it's interesting because this idea of isolating ourselves is actually how we build resilience and healthy boundaries. So if you are, you know, when we have this balance and we've established control over ourselves by doing practices and being disciplined, and we have this mastery over our state, and sort of mastering our domain, we can master sort of our spiritual body. And this is what all of these things in our deen are for. Hijab means protection. So the actual scarf, the covering is a boundary. It is something that protects you from the harshness of the world. Prayer puts your body and your soul into alignment and grounds you in this place of protection. Recitation of the Quran, we know, is a shifa, and it brings protection. Literally, when you read like the 3 kuls on you and wipe it over you, you're creating a boundary of protection against the world. Even eating halal food is something on a really subtle spiritual level that aligns us with protection that it's really hard for us to even understand, because we don't understand how our bodies are connected to the physical world and this whole deep science of spirituality that we never could really understand on our own. But Allah gives us these protective boundaries to protect us and make us solid to navigate this dunya. And so that we can, when we do this, we can walk through this harsh life and be grounded in our own connection to Allah and not fall into other people's mess, right? The dunya is messy. Lots of times people's lives are messy. People walk around with their own cloud over their head of a reality. And oftentimes when you engage with them, they pull you into that. But if you know where your boundaries are and you know where your connection with Allah's reality is, then you can be not so susceptible to falling into being pulled into other people's reality. Because we get very affected by other people. Most of us don't walk into situations where we're like, this is me, this is you, I know where I am. It's, oh my God, that person said this thing, I'm so affected. My mother said this other thing and my whole week is gone. It's blown up because of what she said to me. Why? Because her reality, you allowed it to become your reality. And so you didn't have this level of protection of saying, okay, well, you're there and I'm here. And right. And so it's difficult because we understand Tawheed and interconnectedness, and then this idea of collectivist cultures where we're all supposed to be about each other and we're all one. Right? So this is a paradox. And so the reality is we can be with people and not be affected by them. But in order to do this, sometimes we have to be away from people physically in order to build that strength in ourselves. Right? So that when we're with people, we have a resource to tap into. We can come back into this place of remembrance, of being with Allah, knowing Allah's reality, staying in this semi-permeable membrane of your own protective layer, and then interact with people in a healthy way. But if you're always in the mix, you can't build this protection. So this is why in Islam, khalwa is an integral part of our deen. The Prophet ﷺ, who didn't really, he had the capacity, but his sunnah is to go away from the people every once in a while, to be with himself, be with Allah, generate this protective place of I know where I am with Allah. And then you go back in to be with people most of the time. And so it's building this resource to tap into so that when you are in the mix, in the mess, you're not thrown off and pulled in. And so we have this resource to be reminded of our own personal connection with Allah and remember His reality and not, these people, everybody, even ourselves, we do this to other people. We pull other people into our reality. It's not necessarily intentional. It's not that they're doing it knowingly. Many people do it unknowingly. It's just the nature of human beings. And so you really can't have healthy relationships or be in community in a healthy way unless you put in place healthy boundaries and know what is yours and what is theirs. I'm here, this is my mess, and that's your mess. I'm not gonna get enmeshed with that. And now the beautiful thing about Allah's reality is these paradoxes, because aren't we supposed to look at the other as a reflection, as a mirror, and aren't we supposed to put the other first? And isn't the whole way of finding Tawheed through multiplicity, through the other, in community? Yes, it is. And so it's a paradox because from this oneness in multiplicity, but you can more clearly see Tawheed if you're not enmeshed with the other. Meaning you have your own path that you're walking. We all stand before Allah by ourselves, not with our families, not with our partners, not with the people who we identify with. It's ourselves. So it's our responsibility to make sure that our domain is taken care of. And this actually makes you much more able to do anything with other people, to help other people, to be in relationship with other people, to do for the other. Where are you going to give from if you're not tapping into the source and if you're not full yourself from Allah? Then you're just giving from yourself and you're depleting yourself. You're not actually helping them as much as you think you are. You're not doing this deed of, oh, well, community, family, put family first. This is out of balance, the way that we see it sometimes. And so, it's not about merging with the other. It's about being with Allah and reflecting being with Allah with each other. And so when we, collectivist cultures, it's about the tribe, it's about your family, the identity of the family. You put the other first. And what happens is, as beautiful as a thing that is, if we don't do it in a healthy way, we lose ourselves and we become enmeshed. And so, and this is not Tawheed, this is confusion. So you have to separate yourself to know what's yours and what's theirs. And then you're in a place where you can have a healthy relationship. If I'm here and I have my boundary, but it's open, I'm willing to be vulnerable when it's safe. I'm willing to have that conversation with you as long as I can maintain my connection with Allah. Then we're going to have a much healthier conversation. It's not going to last months and years of resentment because I can actually maybe listen to you because I'm clear on what's mine. I'm not projecting everything onto you and you said this and you have to take some space in order to understand where the healthy connection is and how to engage in it. And so this is really like for ourselves as individuals, this is the primary thing. Whenever there's people, there's this understanding of like, well, you can't really be ready to get married until you've got yourself sorted out. This is true. I mean, you're never going to completely sort yourself out. So you can't wait until that happens. But it means that you have to at least have established a way of doing that before going to the marriage or to the relationship or to the other as the thing that's going to solve or even just, it's not going to be healthy because you're going to be lost. You're going to lose yourself. That's not good for anybody. And so what we have to do is everything, not even just relationships, even just walking, putting yourself in any situation in the dunya, opens you up to these things. And so we have to understand from a spiritual reality, what is that about? It's not just about how do I have better relationships with my psychology? I don't want to, yes, but that's like levels out here. The core reality is you're protecting your ruh, your soul, in its reality of its connection to Allah, and the real state of your being needs protection. And you need to we need to prioritize that by taking accountability, self-responsibility, and really putting in place this protective layer around us. And we have to enact that layer by doing these Sharia things and connecting. But it's, again, the resource that we're pulling on is from Allah, not us. And so it's not, so that's where we get this meded. We can deal with a lot more in our lives when we create these boundaries and connect within that boundary to Allah. If you're just going around and creating boundaries, really all you're doing is just avoiding in relationships and separating yourself. But if within the boundary you're connecting to Allah and being vulnerable with Allah, and allowing this, putting things in place so that there's a protective layer as you do that, then this is how we can elevate the notion of boundaries from a spiritual perspective, inshallah. The biggest thing that we can do is to understand that what will equip us best for dealing with those moments with other people does not happen in the moment with the people. You have to have a time on your own, in your own routine, in your own life, when the relationships aren't happening, so that you have a resource to tap into when you're with those people or with the situation or with whatever it is. It doesn't have to always be family and relationships, but like we said, that's where it comes up a lot. If you're trying to create the tools and instill the tools just with communication and just with how to orient yourself with these other people, you will fail. You will succeed in some way. You can make it a little bit better. You can change the relationship and, sort of move things around so it's easier, but you won't get to the core of what's making it so difficult. And the core is that you have to come back to your core and your being plugged into the source and having the time to do that, this is why halwa, a retreat, has to be incorporated into our priorities in our lives, in our sort of monthly calendar, but also our orientation to Islam and how we practice it. So if, for a lot of people, Islam is in the mosque and everything is in Jama'at, like everything's about other people. You pray with other people. You go to celebrate Eid with other people. You go to Hajj with other people. And when are you alone? I know people who every single prayer, they're praying in Jama'at because the notion is, well, you get more hasanat for it. Well, but there's also a lot that we need to do on ourselves. We need to spend time alone with ourselves. We have to. And that will create a resource for being able to deal with these people and these situations in the moment. You can't do it otherwise. Like, even if you were to try to, like, even when you're dealing with like stress or anxiety, or if you were to say to somebody, like, as soon as the anxiety comes, if you just say, okay, breathe, and they haven't practiced breathing when they're not anxious, they'll just look at you like you're crazy and they'll get frustrated with you. Like, what do you mean breathe? That's what I'm telling you. I can't breathe. And they go, no, just breathe. No, it doesn't work that way. You can't access that part of your brain or that part of your consciousness or that part of your, soul if you haven't practiced it when you aren't in need of it. So this is the key, is practice these things when they're not needed. It's like, you know, like I've said this before, when it's like building resilience, I talked about, you know, you have to train for a marathon. You don't just get out there and run. You have to build up to it, and you do it on your own. You know, when you go to do the event, it's with other people. But when you're training for the event, you know, like you're training on your own, at least for some sports, I guess.